Last week, Donald Trump tarnished the sacred ground of Arlington National Cemetery, filming and posting campaign images taken from those hallowed grounds in violation of both the cemetery's rules and federal law. Now, it's important that we stay shocked by this kind of behavior, so we don't allow Donald Trump to inoculate us against his many sins by simply committing more of them. Trump's campaign took this photo of him posing with a thumbs up in Section 60 of Arlington. Let me tell you a little bit about Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery. It's a 14-acre section, mostly reserved for veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which means it's not just hallowed ground, it's also an active cemetery, visited often by the loved ones of America's recent war dead. The Atlantic's Mitchell Powell described it as both the liveliest and the most achingly sad part of Arlington, where young widows can be seen using clippers and scissors to groom the grass around their husbands' tombstones as lots of children run about. But last Monday, you'd have also seen Donald Trump there taking campaign photos amid the headstones of those war dead. The same man who called dead Marines suckers and losers. That, according to his former chief of staff, John Kelly, who lost his own son, Robert Michael Kelly, 1st Lieutenant, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, who was killed in action in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, on November 9th, 2010. He's buried in Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery. Trump, who said John McCain, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for more than 5 years, was not a war hero because he got captured. Trump, the man who avoided the draft himself on account of bone spurs. So no, it's not a surprise that this man stomped over hallowed ground, that his campaign staff reportedly got into a verbal and physical altercation with an Arlington official, or that his campaign spokesperson later attacked the character of that Arlington official, who then declined to press charges because, according to a New York Times source, she fears retaliation. We must not look away from this behavior. We must not allow it to be normalized by the frequency with which it is repeated and exceeded. As Mitchell Powell writes in The Atlantic, quote, "For Trump, defiling what is sacred in our civic culture borders on a pastime. Peacefully transferring power to the next president, treating political adversaries with at least rudimentary grace, honoring those soldiers wounded and disfigured in service of our country. Trump long ago walked roughshod over all of these norms." This was not a judgment call or a minor violation of obscure bureaucratic boilerplate. In the regulations governing visitors and behavior at Arlington National Cemetery, many paragraphs lay out what behavior is acceptable and what is not. These read not as suggestions, but as commandments. Memorial services are intended to honor the fallen, the regulations note, with a rough eloquence. Partisan activities are inappropriate in Arlington National Cemetery due to its role as a shrine to all the honored dead of the armed forces of the United States and out of respect for the men and women buried there and for their families, end quote. I've invited someone to join me who is both a military veteran herself and a widow of a Marine who is buried in Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery. I'll introduce you to her after the break. On the morning of December 6, 2010, 22-year-old Kate Wyatt had just begun her day when her doorbell rang. On the other side stood 2 Marines. That only ever means one thing. She was about to receive the worst news a spouse could ever hear. Her husband, this man, Marine Corporal Derek Wyatt, had been killed in action in Afghanistan. Kate, a retired Marine herself, was weeks away from giving birth to their son, Michael. On the very same day she learned of her husband's passing, Kate told her doctor she wanted to be induced so she would be able to attend her husband's funeral at Arlington National Cemetery. The very next day, Michael Wyatt was born, 2 weeks early. On January 7th, 2011, both Kate and baby Michael buried their beloved husband and father at Arlington National Cemetery. Kate Wyatt joins me now. Kate, thank you for being with us. This is
thank you so much for having me.
This is 13 years ago, and it's still that never goes away. I do want to start by introducing our viewers to your husband, to Derek. Tell us about Derek.
Absolutely. I talk about him as much as possible. Derek was just such a wonderful person. He lit up every room. He had such a huge personality that many people say that within knowing him for a few minutes, they felt like they knew him for his whole life because he just made you feel so heard and loved and he had such a vibrancy to his life that he was really difficult to not notice.
You're a Marine. When you're the spouse of a Marine and the Marines come to your door, it never means anything else. What was that like for you?
Well, unfortunately, I had just gotten out of the Marines myself because I had wanted to go in as an officer. And Derek had already re-enlisted, and he had said that once he had gotten back from this deployment, which should have rounded out his second contract, that he wanted to get out and help take care of Michael so that I could go to school. And so I gave up my career, and in a lot of ways, I gave up the life that we dreamed of together. And I had just picked up my mom the day before, and we had stayed up really late talking about birth plans because it should have been about a week or two away. And I woke up that morning to the knock at the door. And when I looked through the peephole, I called out for my mom, and I knew exactly what had happened. And I let the gentleman in, and we cried, and I took a deep breath, and I said, what are we going to do now? Because I am 9 months pregnant, and we're expecting our first son, and I don't know what to do. And luckily, through leadership and family and friends, I've made it to today, where I am a graduate student and a mother of the most wonderful 13-year-old boy. And what has gotten me through that a lot is the camaraderie of the Marine Corps. I joined to serve my country. I joined to make a difference, and so did Derek. And so to hear that the one place that we all, service members across the board, respect and revere has been desecrated, not just by Donald Trump yet again, because this is the second time, almost 4 years to the day, that I spoke out about the first time Donald Trump did this. And now that he has a Marine corporal as his vice president, I'm asking for accountability. No, I take that back. I am demanding accountability from Corporal Vance on how this egregious trespassing on sacred ground how it could be worth your integrity to work for a man like that. It's just very un-Marine-like. So I demand answers from him and from the Marines that follow him.
I haven't served a day in my life. I can't imagine the bravery that it takes and the dangers and the things that you have to think about. You are a widow, a Gold Star widow, and a Marine. This doesn't end. As you said, this is not the first time. This continues to happen, the disregard for our armed forces. John Kelly brought Donald Trump to his son's graveside, and he can be seen in a sea of cameras directly behind, adjacent to your husband's grave. Your husband is buried in Section 60.
Directly behind Lieutenant Kelly. Lieutenant Kelly was actually Derek's platoon commander. And when Lieutenant Kelly died, it really rocked Derek. He actually had been able to call me. And so when that picture came out, I was instantly infuriated. I reached out to my friends, and I needed to talk to somebody about how inappropriate this was and how a president of the United States should know that this is inappropriate, let alone to infringe on the grieving process of the Kelly family, who I have the utmost respect for. And so this doesn't end for us. However, our stories help to shape our to-be-told history. Arlington National Cemetery is a visible reminder of the dead who made this country possible. It is also a reminder of the finite room that we have to store honorably the dead from our battles. And it shouldn't have to be explained that this is not an opportunity for a photo op. And so to the Gold Star widow family, to the Gold Star families out there, I respect your right to invite who you choose to your memory ceremonies. However, our service and Section 60 specifically is just so much bigger than any one person that was inappropriate to take pictures. And when you are still young or new to this widowhood of the military, it's important that you understand why we have the rules we have, which was what that staff member was trying to enforce. And in my eyes, protect my husband and his honor and his memory. And they were rough handled at best and assaulted at worst by the Trump campaign because they wanted the entitlement of that honor without ever even, most people can't serve, and that's okay. You can serve in so many different ways. But Donald Trump made his views very clear to General Kelly, what he thought of veterans. And I believe General Kelly. I believe a man of honor. I believe the Kelly family. Donald Trump is not only a felon, but a known liar and a con artist. And I beg the American people to not focus on the bipartisan issue, but rather the moral character of each candidate, so that those of us who are Gold Star widows can continue living our lives with respect and dignity, and without worrying that when I die and my son gets to visit Derek and I in the same place, that he won't have to deal with this, so that we can just kind of clear it up, you know?
Kate Wyatt, thank you for your service to the country. Thank you for keeping the service and ultimate sacrifice of Derek alive and in our memory. Kate Wyatt is a Gold Star widow, a Marine, whose husband is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. We'll be right back.